Chapter 46. Yasmeen and Lonnie. Yasmeen lay back, letting the medicating herbs blur out the pain and memories playing themselves out from 2 mornings ago. She laid on a bed as Lonnie prepared the medication she would use to soften and dilate her cervix. Her mind was numb as the older woman's voice droned on, describing the medication she was going to use and what it would do to start the procedure. Lonnie's round face appeared above hers, forcing her into the here and now, the last place she wanted to be. "Once I apply the medication to your cervix, there is no turning back." Lonnie touched her arm, and it surprised Yasmeen how cold it felt, like the blood had drained from the woman's hands. She didn't expect that, considering she felt so hot. Boiling, actually, like she had a fever coming on. Yasmeen felt sick to her stomach, and the touch of Lonnie's fingers made her question everything she was about to go through. "Are you sure this is what you want to do? You must be certain, Yasmeen, and know that you don't need to do this. You have options." Lonnie spoke as though she could hear the thoughts going through her mind. She swallowed, trying to imagine life if she went through with the pregnancy. A life where, even if she ran forever from Malcolm, he would find her. There was no way he would let her escape with his child. Yasmeen knew this for the truth it was. Her bottom lip trembled, remembering how excited and hopeful she was when she discovered she was pregnant, when a life with Ben and their child was a reality. But it was never real. It was only in her foolish mind that this dream lived. The life planted inside her took it all away, ripped it from her heart, and in its place left something dark and sinister against her will. She couldn't have it. She couldn't allow what was forced against her will to happen. It was her only option, the one thing she could take back control of. "I'm sure." Her crisp voice, unfamiliar and disconnected, said. The older woman sighed, with a slight nod of her head. Yasmeen knew Lonnie didn't want to take part in this terrible choice, but was going to do it anyway. Yeah, she felt guilty for a moment, but then pushed the thoughts aside. She wouldn't allow her mind to think about what Lonnie wanted. Not now. Maybe later, when it was over, when she was free to think of other people once again. When life could start fresh, even in this messed up world she was a part of. "I will repeat myself again," Lonnie said, fiddling with a long cylinder, her hands slightly shaking. "I have never done this procedure before." She paused, trying to steady herself. "It's not what I'm trained to do." "I understand." Yasmeen's dull words fell, foreign, from her dry lips. She fought the urge to touch them, afraid if she moved her hand she would reach for her stomach, with a mind of its own, and that was something she would not allow to happen. That would make her sit up and run from this room and Lonnie, sealing a future that she did not want. "I will give you meds for the pain, but I am limited on supplies." Lonnie's face pinched, knowing what would come after she inserted the medication into her cervix. "It will be unpleasant. You will feel sick, have painful cramping. It will not be easy." Yasmeen swallowed, listening to Lonnie's voice become hollow, echoing as though in a long tunnel. "The fetus may be born alive." Yasmeen refused to blink, not wanting to think about that, not wanting to hear those words. Alive. She nodded and closed her eyes. That was 2 days ago. Lonnie was right. It was horrible. The cramping and the nausea, the running to the bathroom as she held her clammy forehead in her hands, wishing for death, feeling she would rather die than to deal with more. The terrible truth was it just begun. The worst was yet to come, and it did. 2 days after Lonnie, with shaking hands, had placed the medication into Yasmeen's cervix, she lay again on the cot-like bed as Lonnie manually stripped her membrane, forcing her tight cervix to dilate so she could break Yasmeen's bag of water. The fluids gushed, and were still gushing hours later. Throughout her labor, Lonnie was a constant presence by her side, aiding with herbal remedies as she wiped away the sweat from Yasmeen's forehead with a cool cloth. Her admiration for the woman grew in those terrible moments. She found solace in Lonnie's words as her labor persisted. When Lonnie gently rested her stethoscope on Yasmeen's small, round belly, she felt a comforting squeeze from her hand as she whispered the words that sealed it all. "It is over. The womb is silent." Yasmeen's eyes shot up, betraying the small flickers of pain visible in her dilated pupils. A single tear rolled down her cheek, the only tear to ever fall. She nodded her head and wiped the lone drop away. "How much longer now?" She cleared her throat. "Before—" She stopped, unable to ask the question. Lonnie's grip on her hand tightened as she gently rubbed her clammy skin, visibly shaken after hearing no heartbeat. "It won't be much longer," she said, her voice trembling as though it might falter. "I'll do my best to make you as comfortable as I can." Lonnie stood up, turning from Yasmeen, but she could see the older woman's hand go to her mouth, her head bowed, trying to compose herself. Leah was there, standing back in the shadows, the only other person witnessing the horrible choice Yasmeen had made. Ironic, she thought, that it was Leah here to help her and Lonnie. Leah, of all people, showing compassion towards Yasmeen. Leah rose from her seat and approached Lonnie, gently resting a hand on her arm. Lonnie's lips were pursed together, a clear expression of remorse and sorrow visible on her face. Her skin looked pale, but she squeezed Leah's hand in response, offering reassurance. "It won't be long now." Lonnie's voice was hoarse, on the verge of breaking. "Stay with her. I need to see what else I have to help after it's over." Leah nodded, rubbing Lonnie's arm, and watched as she left. Without a sound, Leah stood beside Yasmeen, looking down at her. Yasmeen turned her head away, ashamed to be looked at. The cramping that had started 2 days ago felt more intense, and she bit her fist, trying to disconnect from all that had happened and what was about to come. She felt Leah's hands, soft and gentle, as she placed a cool cloth on her forehead and smoothed back her hair. She said nothing to Yasmeen, but continued brushing back her hair as she sank into the chair that seemed to materialize at the end of her cot. From the time Lonnie declared there was no longer a heartbeat, Leah stood steadfast beside her, a comforting presence as Yasmeen struggled through the pain. She held on to Yasmeen's hand, offering her strength and support as she pushed the lifeless form of the child from her body and into Lonnie's waiting hands. The room was filled with the heavy scent of sweat, antiseptic, and silence. It was over. The pain was excruciating, surpassing any previous experience for Yasmeen. Yet she welcomed it, hoped it would stay burned in her memory forever, a relentless reminder of her actions and what she had done, what she had sat back and let happen. She lay back on the cot, exhausted and numb. It was done. She was no longer pregnant with Malcolm's child. Lonnie carefully wrapped the body of the baby, shielding it from Yasmeen's line of sight. Gathering the bundle, she turned and made her way to leave. Kai and Chris were waiting just outside the door, having promised to handle everything that had transpired within the room discreetly. "Where are you going with it?" Yasmeen bolted up, looking pale. Lonnie turned around, cradling the bundle in her arms as though it were a small, delicate doll. Her expression revealed her guilt. She'd never even considered Yasmeen would want to see the child. "I'm sorry," Lonnie blushed, coming back to the head of the bed. "I just thought—" Yasmeen's eyes looked cold and distant. She knew exactly what Lonnie thought, but she couldn't blame her for thinking it. "What is it?" she asked with a sharp edge to her voice. She blinked, bracing herself for the answer she already knew. "A boy," Lonnie replied. Yasmeen nodded, her answer confirmed. "If you need some time to yourself before—" Lonnie motioned for Leah to come closer. "Take all the time you need, Yasmeen. There's no rush." Lonnie handed over the bundle wrapped in a white blanket. She took it stiffly, not exposing what was running through her mind, keeping her true feelings hidden inside herself. Taking Leah's hand, Lonnie guided her toward the door. As they walked, she glanced back at Yasmeen, who sat emotionless, with the bundle in her arms, staring blankly ahead. Remorse overwhelmed Lonnie. What had she done? What on earth had she allowed herself to do?
Do you think she'll be all right?
Leah asked.
That was...
Her eyes lowered.
horrible.
Lonnie's gaze remained fixed on the closed door as she spoke.
Time has a way of forcing us to move forward, even when we don't want to,
she said softly. The memory of Yasmeen cradling her lifeless child on the bed was already burrowing deep into Lonnie's mind, never to fade away. She stood still, taking in the sight of Kai and Chris standing across from them, waiting. Their eyes were like windows into their thoughts. Kai's brown eyes held anger and accusation, as she had expected. She felt a sharp pang of guilt hit her soul even deeper. Chris, on the other hand, his blue eyes were gentle and sympathetic, with a hint of longing in them. Lonnie couldn't bear to look at either of them. Her mind's eye was fixated on the closed eyelids of the small child she'd moments ago held in her hands. A miniature version of his mother was already visible in his features. The image of his perfect face would stay with Lonnie forever, haunting her for the rest of her life. She had taken his life, and the reality of it all could not be changed. No excuses or reasoning would erase the fact that Lonnie was responsible. No matter how hard Yasmeen pleaded with her, she could have said no, but she didn't. And now, another innocent life was lost because of her actions.
Christopher.
The name rolled off her tongue like a caress, her heart swelling at the memory of her son's bright smile, his tiny teeth like pearls on full display as he waved at her with his chubby hand, the sunlight catching on his light brown hair he'd inherited from his father, making it dance and shimmer around his cherubic face. She could almost feel the warmth of his embrace. He felt so close. Chris took a step towards her, his hand reaching out to offer comfort, but Kai grabbed his arm, stopping him and shaking his head. Chris's confusion was evident, but Lonnie remained still as Kai stared into her eyes with understanding. But then, in a flicker, the sympathy turned into something else. Something that Lonnie always knew was buried deep within Kai. Accusation and blame. Blame for what had happened to Chrissy. Lonnie's heart twisted and contracted as though it was being torn from her chest. She let out a gut-wrenching gasp, the weight of remorse crushing down on her like heavy chains. She struggled to catch her breath, the overwhelming emotions suffocating and drowning her. Kai's eyes remained unmoving on her as Lonnie bent over, letting the emotions of the past few days wash over her. Leah glanced at Kai with a mix of confusion and defiance before going to Lonnie and wrapping her arm around her shoulders. Chris yanked his arm from Kai's hold. Calling out Lonnie's name, he hurried over to her, placing a comforting hand on her back. In that moment, Lonnie let out gut-wrenching sobs, the cries of a mother who had lost the most precious person in her life. Her son. Yasmeen sat unmoving, oblivious to all that was beyond the four walls surrounding her. She waited, half out of it, half listening, until she could not hear any murmurs coming from the other side of the wall. She'd thought she heard someone call out Lonnie's name, but ignored it, pushing away any connection to what might have been going on outside. Her only concern was when the noise ended, and Yasmeen knew for sure they were gone. So she waited. She had no idea how long it was before the sounds behind the door were gone. Once she was sure, she slowly swung her legs over the cot and gently let her bare feet touch the ground. She stood cautiously, waiting to see if her strength would fail her. It didn't. She wasn't as weak as she thought she would be after the hideous ordeal she had just been through. It disgusted her. She felt almost normal. How could she be normal? Yasmeen looked around for her clothes and saw them neatly folded on an empty dresser on the other side of the room. She slipped into them, careful to keep the massive diaper-sized pad Lonnie had placed inside a pair of mesh underwear she now wore. She didn't want to think why she needed the diaper like underpants, and chose to think about the letter she wanted to write to Lonnie. Her heart pounded when glancing at the white bundle on the bed. She would not look inside it. She wouldn't torture herself that way. She took out a pen in the nightstand drawer and wrote on some old yellowish stationery.
"Dear Lonnie,"
she began.
"Thank you for your compassion and kindness. I understand it was hard for you, yet you still did it for me. Please forgive me for what I'm about to do, and trust that we are on the same side. I am forever in your debt. Thank you. Yasmeen."
She folded the paper up and wrote in large letters, Lonnie, hoping she had spelled it right. She placed it on the bed and reached for the brown leather satchel Malcolm had given her as a gift the day after raping her. Inside was another letter, already written and safely put away. Gently, she put the white bundle into the bag, making sure it was secure at the bottom, glad she couldn't see what was within. She tightened the clasps and slipped the strap over her shoulder. She turned towards the window, the very one earlier she'd made sure would open, and that it was close enough to the ground outside to get down from. She looked around the room, feeling Lonnie and Leah's presence everywhere. The three of them would never forget this day. It was stamped into their memories forever. She would never forget what they did for her. Ever. She only hoped she would live to see them both again, and crawled out the open window, the brown satchel clasped tightly against her.